We got a Bears news alert here on Chicago Bears Now. My name is Harrison Graham. The Bears have hired 2 more coaches. We are going to tell you who those coaches are and pass along as much information on those coaches as we can. And then toward the end of the video, kind of just look back at all of the hires so far and what other spots need to be filled moving forward. But this is why you A, subscribe, but B, join the Noti Gang. What is the Noti Gang? It is turning on notifications on this channel. So the way to do that is to hit the subscribe button, click the bell, and then select all. What that will do for you is, if you watch on phone, tablet, whatever, it'll send you a notification the second the video publishes. So when breaking news drops, you're going to be the first one to see it. Hit the sub button, turn on the notifications, join the Noti Gang here at Bears Now. Okay, the Bears have hired or are hiring a defensive line coach. It is Jeremy Garrett, who spent last season as the Jacksonville Jaguars defensive line coach. I'll just say right off the bat, I don't know a ton about him. The second coach we're going to get into, there's way more information out there. But Jeremy Garrett spent last season with the Jags. Interestingly enough, it's probably just a coincidence with the timing of Myles Garrett trade request, but he was the Browns' assistant defensive line coach for 2 years, in 2020 and in 2021. Had a couple of college stops before going to Jacksonville. We'll talk about that here in a second as well. But maybe, just maybe, is that some kind of connection, influence here? Probably not. I don't think the Garrett trade request drops, then the next day the Bears are operating, oh, let's get someone who's coached Myles Garrett. Teams don't operate that way, especially that quickly. But it is an interesting nugget if the Bears were to opt to consider trading for Myles Garrett. Well, now you have someone in the building who has coached him directly. So that is interesting. Same last name, too, which is kind of funny. I do want to give credit to Matt Zenitz for the report here via CBS 24/7, saying that Jeremy Garrett is going to be the Bears' new defensive line coach. He was with the Jags this past season. He also is a former Ole Miss defensive lineman, so that's kind of interesting with Walter Nolan and Princely Uman Maleen being there. You wonder if he has any connections there with 2 prominent defensive linemen in this draft. He was also at Auburn and Liberty before the Jags gig and after being the Browns' assistant D-line coach. So those have kind of been his stops over the last 4 or 5 years. And I do wonder, because this is relatively a young, inexperienced coach, although he was an NFL D-line coach last year. You also have Bill Johnson, who longtime defensive line coach for decades and decades. I wonder if this is almost like they're comboing this, like Bill Johnson's going to be a mentor to Jeremy Garrett here and work with the defensive line a lot. Obviously, Garrett will as well. You'll have a couple of voices in there. Now, obviously, to me, for a structure, you want that top clear voice, and you would think that would be Garrett with that title, but Bill Johnson's got a lot of experience. It's had a lot of success as a coach in this league. So you kind of have both sides of the sword there, the veteran experienced guy, then the young up-and-comer energetic guy. So interesting to see how that dynamic unfolds. Okay, linebacker coach Richard Smith, who has been with the Colts the last 3 years, saw the development of Zaire Franklin from a relative unknown to an all-pro. So that's pretty intriguing to me. And he actually joined that staff the year after Matt Eberflus left to become the Bears head coach. So kind of indirect domino there, if you will. We'll talk more about Richard Smith coming up here in a moment. He, unlike Jeremy Garrett, has been around the block a time or two. But first, I do want to shout out our sponsor, Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. Speaking of that, lowering your bills, you can even negotiate through Rocket Money. They'll negotiate to lower bills for you by up to 20% sometimes. All you got to do is submit a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money will take care of the rest. Maybe you got cell phone provider bill you're looking to get a better price on. Maybe your homeowner's insurance or electric bill, whatever the case would be. If you're trying to scale back and find a better deal, Rocket Money will kind of do the surfing for you and try to get you a better price. Obviously, getting rid of those subscriptions you no longer want to pay for, streaming services, online newspapers, whatever the case may be. With clicking a few buttons, they will help you get rid of those that you don't want, and you'll be able to see just how much you're spending on a monthly basis on those subscriptions. Most Americans think it's like $62. It's really closer to $300. Trust me, when I got going with Rocket Money, I had a couple subscriptions I didn't even know I was signed up for. Probably did it one time to watch some random show and just completely forgot about it. RocketMoney.com/BearsNow. Just basic banking, financial things to stay on top of too, checking your credit score, managing your budgets, all that. I like it better than normal banking apps. Get signed up today. Link is in the comments and the description. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions at RocketMoney.com/BearsNow. They have saved their 5 million users and counting $500 million in canceled subscriptions alone, and you can save up to $740 per year with their full app member benefits if you do that. So rocketmoney.com/BearsNow. Okay, Richard Smith. This guy, and by the way, he had a few stops before this, but this is when he started in the NFL. You've been around for a while when you were the Houston Oilers assistant coach. He actually did some offensive line work there, so he's been on both sides of the ball a little bit. Broncos for a while there, special teams, assistant linebackers, and then that's kind of when he really went on or found his kind of niche as a linebackers coach. 49ers for 6 years, Lions for a couple years, gets a couple of DC gigs with the Dolphins and then the Texans, bounces back to being a linebacker coach with Carolina, Broncos linebacker coach, more on that stop in a second, Falcons defensive coordinator, then back to his bread and butter, Chargers, Raiders, Colts. This guy's a linebacker coach, kind of like Bill Johnson, who I think they're both 69 years old, by the way. Very nice. Bill Johnson, longtime defensive line coach. Richard Smith, longtime linebacker coach. That is who these guys are. And there is a connection here. Dennis Allen was the Broncos defensive coordinator in 2011 before he got the Raiders head coaching job in 2012. So they did overlap in Denver there for his season. So there is a connection. Obviously, 2011 is almost 15 years ago. So that is a long time ago, but not a complete random one. I'm not sure what the Jeremy Garrett connection is just yet. We'll see if there is one or if they just went through the interview process and really liked what he brought to the table. Now, here's a twist on this Richard Smith hire. Aaron Lemming had this note. I didn't put this together, so credit to Aaron. The Bears just fired his son, Travis Smith, who was the D-line coach on the prior staff, and have now hired his dad as the linebackers coach. Now, that's just coaching business, I guess, but it is fascinating to see how that plays out. And Travis has landed somewhere. I think he got hired yesterday or today, so good for him. But that's certainly an interesting angle. Hopefully there's no, bad blood situation there. I would imagine there isn't if he's willing to take the job. But certainly you coach long enough, weird things like that can happen. Okay, what is your favorite assistant coach hire so far? And not coordinator. So, like, Dennis Allen would be the cliche answer, right? Like, position coach, pass game coordinator on either side of the ball, whatever the case may be. Let us know in the comments. And if you're forgetting some of the hires, well, let's go through some of those right now. Offensive staff. There's been 8 hires. Ben Johnson's the head coach. Antoine Randall, the assistant head coach. He's also the wide receiver coach. Declan Doyle's the offensive coordinator. Press Taylor's the pass game coordinator. Quarterback coach is JT Barrett. Running back coach is Eric Bieniemy. Tight end coach is Jim Dre, the only holdover from the last staff. And then Dan Rochar is the offensive line coach. And we've talked about this a little bit, but you've got a really good blend here of veterans and young guys. Like JT Barrett's 30 years old. Dan Rochar is 64 years old. Eric Bieniemy is 55. Antoine Randall is experienced, but he's still relatively young. So you've got a lot of good blend there. And offensively, obviously, you're mostly set there. We'll see if they actually add a run game coordinator. I'm not sure it's actually needed. But quality control, assistant O-line, you'll have a few more hires there. But the main positions are filled on the offensive side of the ball. Clearly, defensive still got a ways to go. You got Dennis Allen, Al Harris, who's your defensive pass game coordinator and defensive backs coach. Jeremy Garrett, Richard Smith. I would imagine you're still going to get corners, a safety coach in there, so a couple position groups. I went ahead and just put Richard Hightower with the defensive graphic here as special teams coordinator. Also a holdover, the only coordinator to be retained, obviously, on Ben Johnson's staff. So little ways to go here on the defensive side. Obviously, some more hires to be made here, but we're kind of getting close to the finish line for, like, the headliner hires. Like, you got a couple of defensive position guys. We'll see if there's kind of a, you've got the senior defensive. Oh, I probably should have mentioned that. Senior assistant Bill Johnson on the defensive side. But we'll see if there's one of those on the offensive side. I'm not sure yet, but you're pretty set. I'd say your staff from a volume perspective is probably 75% done. And from, like, main notoriety, position coach, guys who are going to be, doing a lot of the hands-on work, you're about 90% of the way there. You got maybe one or two more of those before you are set. So getting close to Ben Johnson filling out his staff. And again, I do just want to point out, this is why the Lions making the Super Bowl kind of would have sucked. You wouldn't even have the Saints don't even have their head coach yet. And the Bears have a lot of their assistants hired. So that is the advantage of getting a coach sooner rather than later. Obviously, I would have waited on Ben Johnson, but them losing to Washington, this is why I was rooting for Washington. So you could hit the ground running, get Ben in here, and start to build up your staff. That's going to do it for us here on Chicago Bears Now. We will be back tomorrow with a couple more videos, so be sure to subscribe and join us then. And as always, bear down.